what if I like started my own record label powered by my fans? I've made like well into six figures on Patreon since I started. I self-release under Rebel River Records, but also I use my patrons as this kind of, they act as like my label reps, as like I like to say, because I literally post all of the songs for that I'm considering for my records on Patreon, and they vote on which songs they think should go on the record. It's really been
Cool.
fun to get to not only crowd fund but also crowdsource their opinions and treat them like my team.
What's going on? Welcome to the New Music Business. I'm your host, Ari Herstand, author of How to Make It in the New Music Business. The book, third edition, is out now everywhere in hardcover, in audiobook or ebook, or however you consume books. You can find How to Make It in the New Music Business on that. Today, my guest is Raye Zaragoza. She is an incredibly talented indie DIY singer-songwriter artist who just released her new album, Hold That Spirit. It's a great record. You should check it out. The record, all the collaborators on it, actually, all the songwriters and producers, they're all women. We talk about that a little bit and kind of how that came to be. She is very successful on Patreon. She has made over six figures on Patreon with just 150 patrons. And we talk about how she did that and how that does it. She's been very successful on sync. She's had a bunch of sync. She has a sync agent. She's repped by one of the best sync agencies out there. And she's gotten a lot of success there. And we talk about how she writes for sync, what that even means to write for sync, what co-writing sessions are like, and how, writing to briefs and all that. So, I've had a lot of people on the show from the other side of sync, where music supervisors and sync agents. And if you're interested in sync, go listen to those episodes, because we've had so many people in sync from Lindsay Wolfington, Jen Malone, Madonna Wade Reed, these music supervisor superstars, to various sync agencies, and now an artist who does really well in writing for sync. She's also a composer. Well, she's she was writing music, or has written music, for Netflix's show Spirit Rangers, and she's, I guess, officially credited as the composer on that. But as she'll talk about, she writes songs for this animated kids show, and we talk about the business behind that and how she goes about writing for the show, and how she gets credited, how the royalties work, how the money works, all of that stuff. Of course, this is the New Music Business podcast, so we dig into all of that. But Raye is an artist who really embodies the DIY ethos and spirit. She makes a good living as an indie musician, doing a lot of the things. She's going on a headlining tour this fall, and you should definitely see her. She's doing a US headlining tour. She's a DIYer, and she, writes for sync, and she has all these various buckets of how she makes it work. And so if you're an artist or a manager out there and you're kind of like, well, how are people making it work these days? This is an episode to listen to. And like she'll tell you, her streaming numbers are very modest. And they are not numbers that you would normally think of when you see them, of an artist who is making a very good living in music as an original performing contemporary artist. But she's making it work, and making it work really well. So, don't get blinded by the vanity metrics, and really focus on what is most important in your career. And we talk about that on this episode, and that is cultivating a diehard, strong audience, fan base that's going to stick with you for life, and also just making a living doing what you love. And we talk all about that, and Raye fully embodies it. You can find Raye Zaragoza, that's RayeZaragoza, Raye Zaragoza, on all the socials. Go follow her on all the socials. Find her on however you listen to music. Her new album is called Hold That Spirit. It's a great record. Go listen to that album. You can find all of us that make the show happen at Ari's Take on Instagram and TikTok and Twitter and Threads and all the spots. You can find me at Ari Herstand on Instagram and Twitter and maybe Threads still. I don't know. Pause the show right now. Give us a 5-star review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Hit that follow button. Hit that subscribe button. However you're listening to this right now, just pause right now. Hit the follow. Hit the subscribe if you want to get more episodes like this in your feed. That really helps. But most importantly, go to aristake.com. Get on the email list. That is where you're going to get the most up-to-date information. We can't live and die by the social media platforms or the streaming platforms, any of that stuff. But if you want to stay in touch, if you want helpful information and tips in your inbox about the new music business, go to aristake.com, sign up on the email list, and that's how we're going to stay in touch. Email is still tried and true after all these years. All right, well, let's kick into the show. Raye Zaragoza, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. What an honor. Like the Ari Herstand. This is so exciting.
I'm super excited. It's funny, last I saw you was a few weeks ago walking the red carpet at the Les Mis. I think it was the opening night at the Pantages.
Yeah.
And opening night, yeah. And I didn't think too much of it. I'm just like, oh, she's got an album coming out. So like her publicist is like hooking it up and like this makes sense and everything. And I like, from my vantage point, I like snapped a video. I'm like, oh, that's cool, right? Get it. But then you announced like a few days later that you were cast as Tiger Lily in the national Broadway tour of Peter Pan, which then I connected the dots. I'm like, oh, it all makes sense now.
Yeah.
So first off, congrats on that. That's that's like my dream. I'm a huge musical theater
Theater
nut.
kid? Yes!
As you could probably, I'm such a theater kid. So like I was losing my shit. So excited, so happy for you. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. That means a lot. I'm like so excited. Yeah.
So what's like? I guess. I mean, I have so many questions about it. We could spend the entire time talking about it, which we're not because you're here to talk about your new album, which is amazing. I want to get into that and all of that and the tour and all the stuff you're here to promote. But my musical theater kid inside of me needs to ask just a few questions. So have you I know you've done the promo for it because I've seen the photos and the press releases and the Playbill article and everything. But like, have you started rehearsing it all, or what's the process like right now?
Yeah, so right now it's like crazy because I'm kind of like straddling both Peter Pan and then the album promotional tour. Also, if you hear anything, it's my dog. She's just like going crazy right next to me. But she's having a blast like in her playpen. So basically like I'm doing both things simultaneously. I was in New York a couple weeks ago for a developmental workshop for Peter Pan. And then I'm going back to New York in a couple weeks for choreography stuff. But we like officially start rehearsals in October or the end of October, beginning of November. And my headline tour goes from I leave in 2 weeks and then I'm doing that for like 5 weeks. And then I have 1 week off. And then I start like hardcore 6 days a week rehearsals for Peter Pan. So it's just like, oh my gosh, craziness. But like I don't feel stressed. I'm like so excited about all of it. I think like for me, I grew up in New York City. My dad was on Broadway when I was a kid. I grew up doing off Broadway and regional theater when I was like 8 years old until I was a teenager. So like I've always done theater, and then I kind of stopped doing theater to just focus on music. So now I'm getting back into it. But theater feels so much like home, and I already feel this like weight off my shoulders that for a year I get someone who's going to tell me where to be, tell me what to do, tell me what to say. And as you know, and as all your listeners know, as an independent artist, there's so much agency involved. There's so much, you have to be your own boss at every hour of every day. So it's kind of exciting to get to step into a role for a year or so. We'll see how long I'm doing the show. And also to be a part of such an iconic character in a new and reimagined way that's not going to be racist anymore, not going to be super stereotypical anymore. And I'm excited about that responsibility to get to recreate that with the playwright and the director. So it's all very exciting, but a lot going on.
Wait, so tell me about this new Peter Pan. Is this like, I guess I'm not super familiar with this version.
Yeah.
Is this like a you said reimagined? Is
Right.
this like a brand new musical that has been rewritten? You said with the playwright
Hmm.
and the director. So tell me a little bit
Yeah.
about that,
Yeah.
and how is
So
it not racist?
yeah. Yeah. So
Then yeah.
I mean, first of all, like everyone's gonna have to see it because there's a lot of stuff that we're still developing right now.
Okay.
But
Oh, okay.
basically this is the musical, the like Broadway hit musical Peter Pan that Kathy Rigby did. Like we are
Yeah.
doing that show,
Oh,
but there
okay.
have been a lot of
Gotcha.
modifications and change. An additional book written by Larissa Fasthorse, who is an amazing Indigenous playwright who has a show on Broadway right now, the Thanksgiving play that I went to go see. That was amazing. And I actually did
Awesome.
her very first musical ever when it was developing at Native Voices at the Autry in Los Angeles when I was 14. And so to get to come full
Wow.
circle and not be a part of like her biggest musical yet is like really, really exciting. So yeah, Larissa Fasthorse has done additional book, has pretty much with the, you know, the estate has granted her the responsibility and honor of
Got
getting
it.
to, you know, get to completely rewrite the parts of the musical that she wants to and the parts that need changing.
Yeah.
And you know, I am not allowed to say like so much about what's different because we want to leave that
Sure.
to everyone when they get to see it. But Tiger Lily in the original was this like silent daughter of the chief who like hardly has any lines, and then she has like this one very racist song, and it's different in the movie, but in the musical it's like this horribly stereotypical song. So I can say that that is gone, and there's
Mm.
a whole
Okay.
new song, and Tiger Lily is a much bigger character, a much larger part of the story arc and of, you know, taking Hook down, and she's a bigger part of everything.
Cool.
And so it's really exciting to get to
Cool.
do that, because also this character is so beloved, and also I'm excited about the changes. And now Neverland represents not only like Native American people, but also represents indigenous extinct indigenous tribes from all over the world. And a
Wow.
member of every different tribe went to Neverland to preserve their culture. So it's really exciting because we're not
Ah.
only, yeah, we're not like, because in the original, Tiger Lily and her tribe was like one fictional tribe, but now
Yeah.
the Indians, the indigenous people of Neverland represent many different tribes that are extinct from around the world. So it's really exciting because we're
Amazing.
getting to cover so much ground of very different people, and so I'm just one of those people. And so yeah, it's really cool.
That's awesome, and I'm sure it's it. Well, I'm curious, like as an indigenous person, or I believe you're from. Correct my pronunciation. Akimel Otham. How do you
I
say
am
that?
of
The
Akima Otham
descent.
descent. I'm also Mexican
Thank
and
you.
Asian American. Yep.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So, did Larissa seek you out for this? Did you audition? How did this
Yeah,
come to
I
be?
auditioned. I did the whole audition
Cool.
process, which was
Wow.
wild and so much fun. And I definitely, the casting director, Duncan, who was so amazing and helped me through the whole process, knew I was really nervous because I haven't been a part of an audition process like this since I was a kid, literally, since I started doing music at 18. So I was like, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I made like, I was on tour in a hotel room and I made an audition tape. And, you know, usually when you do audition tapes, like you need to have a really nice backdrop and all the lighting needs to look good and everything.
Yeah.
But I was in this like horribly dim lit like hotel in Madison, Wisconsin, about to open for,
Hey, my
oh
hometown.
yeah, no way. About to open for
Yeah,
Delta Ray that night. I hadn't slept the night
Uh-huh.
before, and I had to get the audition tape in that day. And so that's how I did my first audition. And then I had to fly to New York for 2 callbacks. And then I
Ah,
booked it. So yeah, I
amazing.
definitely was on their radar because I've worked with Larissa before, but it was really
Sure.
cool to get to do the whole thing.
But
And
not for like 15 years,
yeah, for
right?
like 15 years, haven't worked with her since then.
Yeah.
But the coolest part was getting to be a part of a dance call because that was so scary. And I told them, I was like, look, like I haven't really danced like this in like 10 years. And they're like, you're going to be fine. Just
Oh my
get in
gosh.
there. Come to New York in Midtown in the big studio. And we're going to have you do a dance call with all
Oh
these
God.
other ensemble dancers who went to school for it and have been dancing for 10 years, 5 days a week. And I'm like, okay, great, here we go.
No.
And so I did the dance call, and it was like really fun, and like it was this pirate dance, so it was a blast. But yeah, I was super nervous, but it was also really fun. Like the theater kid inside of me who got to sing, like I sang a song from Hadestown, and then I sang one of my songs. But it was fun to get to sing a musical theater song.
Cool.
And like get to scratch that itch of musical theater again.
So cool. I love to hear that they've updated it. And I mean, just from looking at the playbill announcement, the promo photo that's gone everywhere, I mean, Tiger Lily's one of the leads, one of the 4 leads, I guess, as what the image looks like. So that's super cool. Yeah, I not many people know this. Some people do, but similarly, when I came out to LA, I started screen acting a little bit. Like I grew up doing theater similarly, and then I like fell into acting and like felt completely out of my element since I hadn't done anything since theater or whatever. But like started doing like a bunch of different like TV shows and everything like that, and totally. I mean, so out of the element, but so much fun. And you're right. It's like, it's so, even though it's all under the entertainment industry umbrella, it's so dramatically different running an independent music career than anything else in the entertainment world, especially theater or TV, film, all that stuff, where they literally like, yes, they tell you where to be, what to say, what time to show up, stay in your trailer, I'm going to come get you, time for lunch, you know.
Everything.
It's like night and day where it's just like, So, I mean, but you're like, you embody kind of this DIY indie musician essence and spirit and energy and everything that, I mean, like you've really established and built up such an incredible career for yourself. And with this, your new album, Hold That Spirit, like I want to talk about that and then kind of work our way backwards a little bit on just kind of how you got here. But something that really kind of took me, first listening to it, brilliant record, beautiful, I love it, the production's incredible, the songwriting's great. So lyrically it's really strong and it's like authentically you, but like really big and enhanced production, but then you strip it down, it's really cool, and I really resonated. And what was interesting, so track number 1, Joy Revolution, I'm listening to it, I got my good headphones on, and I'm listening to it, and I'm like, damn, this production sounds like AG. This sounds like Adrian Gonzalez.
No way.
Literally, like first, I'm not shitting you, and because I'm like I'm a big Rescues fan, and I've like known Adrian for years, and like I played a few shows with the Rescues back in the day, and like I'm listening, and I know all of her stuff, and I'm just like, And so I'm listening to this. I'm like, man, this really sounds like AG production. And sure enough,
it's AG.
AG produced it. Right. It was AG.
AG produced 3 of the songs on the record, and she is amazing. And also doing stuff with musical theater right now too. So, she's.
Oh no shit! I didn't know that.
Yeah,
cool.
She's amazing. Love her.
So talk. So, I read and I noticing on the credits. All your collaborators on the record were women. Is that correct?
Yeah. The record was made entirely by women. All the co-writers, producers, engineers, mastering engineer, and artwork. Pretty much everything. Yeah.
So did that just happen because those are your current collaborators, and at the end of the day, you're like, oh wow, that's interesting, or was that intentional from the get-go?
It was. A little bit of both, but initially it was an accident, and then it became intentional. Once I realized what was happening, I was like, let's lean into this. But a lot of the collaborators on this record were people that my sync agents linked me up with to write for sync. And then
Secret Road.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that's how I met Anna Schulze. That's how I met Haley McLean, Texada, and all these amazing women. And I don't know, I just these were my favorite. When I signed with Secret Road in 2021, end of 2021, they set me up on like tons of writes, and then these just like ended up being my favorites, and then I ended up writing with them again, and I was like, this is funny. A lot of my favorite writers I'm writing with are women, and then we wrote all these songs, many of which kind of started out as like maybe this would be for sync, and then I realized about
Yeah.
a year later, I was like, no, like I'm writing a record here. And then I asked Lynn Grossman, Secret Road, who runs Secret Road, and I was like, is it weird if I make an album with like many different producers? She's like, that's not weird, do it. And so I ended up having this like overarching theme of, songs all made by women, and I have a few songs with
Yeah.
collaborators that I made with folks who aren't women, and those were like there were like only a few songs that I kind of had to be like, well, that'll be for another project. But so it was accidental,
Yeah.
but then it became intentional, and then I sought out like a female mastering engineer and did that, which
Cool.
ended up really working out, especially in that time in my life where I was really needing some sisterhood and some support from women
Yeah.
because I was like going through a breakup
Yeah.
and all these things. And so yeah, it ended up being this kind of beautiful accident.
Yeah, and it made a lot of sense that you're with Secret Road. And Lynn Grossman, for those who don't know, she initially was a music supervisor, then she started managing Ingrid Michaelson. I think that was her only client as management for many years, if not still. And then she started Secret Road, and Secret Road is one of the powerhouse sync agents out there. And is that how you met AG also?
No, I actually met
Oh,
AG through Connie Lim, Milk.
Milk.
Connie and
Yeah.
I have been friends for a while, maybe like 6 years or so. I literally just like,
Mm-hmm.
she was like one of those like people I was such a big fan of. And I told my managers, I was like, can you like figure out how I can get lunch with her? And then they like figured it out. And then I got lunch with her. And then
Yeah.
we were like fast friends and have been like friends ever since.
I'm surprised you didn't run into Connie Milk over the years in the Hotel Cafe singer-songwriter
I never
scene,
ran into her at
or
Hotel
whatnot.
Cafe.
Yeah,
No, and I was always
okay,
so in and out of
cool,
the LA scene too because I was living in New York and then back and forth.
sure,
But yeah, so
right,
that's how I met AG. Was Connie had me sing on one of her songs for like a thing that she put on Instagram, and then AG was like, "Who's that? Let's all write together." And then
cool,
we all went from there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and what I mean, this kind of it really works out and it makes sense because both, Connie Milk is her artist name, Milck, is and is like a fellow activist, and she kind of broke out during the Women's March with her song "I Can't Keep Quiet" in was that 2017? I guess it was right after it was the big Women's March.
Yeah, January
right?
2017
Right
was the
after,
Women's March. Yeah.
right. So, I mean, it made sense because a lot of the themes on this record, I mean, it's a very personal record, but it has a lot of universal themes, but also rooted in kind of this individual kind of feminism and just like self-empowerment and just like awareness. And is that like, is that been something that is always was that similar? I guess the same question. Like, was that intentional going into this writing process, or did kind of Milk? I'm gonna just call her Milk. Did she kind of help? Did you guys talk about that? Did that come out in the writing sessions? Did I guess being surrounded by women through all of this, I'm curious to know just like what that experience was like in the writing rooms, and in the recording sessions with topics that you cover in this. I mean, it's in your bio and press release, and you wrote about it on your description on YouTube. But like, you have a song acknowledging like an eating disorder, which is something that's like the themes in this are very, very personal and very at times heavy. And so I'm curious, like, kind of getting so personal, and like you said, one coming out of the breakup of you were engaged. I mean, like, this is like really intense stuff. So tell me about the process of just like actually deciding to write about that and then actually deciding to release it. And now, I mean, you're here talking about it, which I know is not fucking easy. Like, I did it, I'm an artist. I released a really personal record and then had to go talk about it for a while. So like, step me through all of this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. I didn't really realize what I was doing until it was done. I feel like I've been trying to explain this to people about, at least for me, when I'm in a room writing a song with someone, it doesn't really cross my
Yeah.
mind that this song is going to be released or could be released, or that's not really
Okay.
what I'm thinking about. I'm just thinking about, let's write a good song, like let's write, like what are we feeling? And I feel like, you know, all most of these songs on this record were written the last year, like with the year I was 29, the year that like all these things went down in my life, that I got engaged and then we broke up and all these things. And I realized that a lot of these writing sessions with these women were like my safe place away from a lot of the drama going down in my
Mm.
life. And um
Wow.
especially the so Anna Schulze, she made a bulk of the songs. She did 4 songs with me, and we would talk for like 3.5 hours and then start writing a song.
Mm.
um and
Wow.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I really feel like I kind of was using her as a therapist a little bit, but we got so
Mm.
deep into how we were feeling and we connected on so many levels, um that once we
Mm.
got to the stage of writing the song, it was so hyper personal. I mean, she helped me write Sweetheart and Not a Monster, Hold That Spirit, and Garden, which I think are so
Mm.
personal,
Mhm.
especially Not a Monster, talking about
Mhm.
disordered eating, something that
Mhm.
Anna and I both um, experienced. And so I feel like getting so personal on this record was really just the outcome of working with people like Anna, like Milk and AG and Belinda Huang and Haley McLean, because I felt so comfortable with them. I consider all of them
Mm.
like very, very close friends. And so it was so easy to
Mhm.
be so, so raw and vulnerable with them and just write from that place. And then when we went through and
Yeah.
picked all of the best songs for the record, it ended up being a lot of the more vulnerable songs. And then all these things happened in my life, and all of these things I was writing about kind of came true. Like the things that I was struggling with came to
Mm.
fruition. And then it was time to package the record together. And then I listened to it down before I released it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is really heavy. And really
Yeah.
personal and really uplifting in many parts, but also really triggering
Yeah.
and intense. And
Yeah.
I almost didn't realize I was doing that until it was all packaged and done. And here's the songs, because when you're in it and when it's your story, it almost doesn't feel that deep or intense because you experienced it. So it just feels like an
Sure.
everyday thing. And so I've really
Yeah.
come to realize that in interviews, and realizing, whoa, like this is
Mm.
some intense stuff. And there have been a couple interviews earlier on before the album was out. Now that
Yeah.
the album is out, I feel like all that pain, all that intensity has been like released into the sky and it's out of my body and I feel so good
Yeah.
about it. But the interviews before the album came out, where I was doing interviews for the album for when it had come out, so like these were interviews we were pre-recording or whatever, those were really hard for me.
Right.
And those felt
Yeah.
intense, and I felt like, should an artist be this honest? Should we keep more to ourselves? Am I making
Yeah.
a mistake by talking too much about my life and all these things? All of which I've come to the conclusion, no, I'm proud of everything I've put out. But I think
Yeah.
those first interviews were definitely hard.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, songwriting is a form of therapy. It's therapy for us, or even the process of writing or in those sessions, and but so is the act of recording and
Mm-hmm.
releasing. And I remember when I similarly I got out of a breakup of 11 years
Wow.
years back, and I wrote my only way to cope after that 11-year breakup was songwriting, was writing about it.
Yeah.
And I spent the whole year just writing, and I wrote like 40 songs. And it was incredibly therapeutic
Mm-hmm.
for me. And then I wasn't writing for
Right.
anything either.
Right.
I was just like, I just need to do this for
Yeah. Get
myself.
it
I wasn't
out.
planning on doing a record. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't writing with other, I just needed to get it out. And then I was like, all right, I want to kind of, put some of these and record some of them and release them. And it was kind of like, I remember when I mentioned to my therapist that like I want to release this,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, he's like, yeah, releasing is very important, and releasing it's a great word for what you're doing. And like,
That's exactly
it's
how it
like we
feels.
always say, oh, we're releasing a record,
Yeah.
but it's like you're releasing so much more than just recordings, just so much more than just a body of work or whatever. Like when it's so personal like this, releasing, you need to do that to complete it. It's like the bookend. It's like, okay, now I can move on. And I was with my I was dating someone at the time who's now my wife, and going through this process while she was around. It was like, she was like, you need to release this. Like, she couldn't handle being around it anymore.
Right.
She's like, all right, please get this out so we can move forward.
It's so true. I feel that.
Yeah.
I feel that. Like release, like the release of the music and the release of it. I mean, this week is a wild week for me. One, the full moon tonight, feel that. And then two, it will be a year since I got engaged this week. So I'm feeling a lot of this, and then the album just came out, and so it's like, it's wild to kind of feel all these things and have it be released, and it's now out of my body, and now it's in the record players of all of the people who enjoy my music, and I've gotten so much, so many messages and people coming up to me after my shows being like, "Thank you," and a lot of people who are going through divorces or breakups or had been in difficult situations and have come to me being like, your music is like the soundtrack to my healing right now. And that means so much. And it makes all of those days where I felt a little uncomfortable of how much I was sharing feel worth it, because I think that for me, my favorite artists are when I listen to a song and I'm like, dang, they said that? That's so personal. And then that makes me feel so good and feel so seen. And so if I can do that for other people, like that's literally my job. So
yeah, no, that's great. And it's like once something that you're probably realizing, and every artist eventually realizes, and it's initially startling, I would say at times, is once you release music into the world, or I should say a song into the world, it's no longer your song. It's now everybody else's. And you can't really control the reaction or response. And so some people might interpret a song that's the complete opposite way that you intended. But you know what? That's just, and it's like I look at that with the Oliver Anthony, the dude who wrote the song "A Rich Men North of Richmond," that's number one on the charts right now, that they reference at the Republican debate, and like all the conservatives are like use it as like a rallying cry, and then he's like, "No, I wrote this about you," and but it doesn't matter. Like literally, he said that he's like, I wrote this about these assholes. What are they doing? Trying to and it's funny because I was like thinking about it doesn't. But it doesn't matter because like people are going to interpret songs how they want to interpret it, how it's going to be meaningful to them, how they resonate. And so like you could write a song meaning one thing and then the audience could interpret it something else. I don't think it's going to be as drastic and extreme and dramatic as that of what Oliver Anthony's going through right now. But at the same time, it's like getting these responses. I mean, have you gotten responses from people so far, messages where it maybe the message was a little confusing, or be like, oh, that's not what I meant, or how do you respond to that?
Well, what's funny is so Bittersweet, which is one of the songs that I made with Milk and AG, was not originally written as a breakup song. That song was we wrote it from this place of like breaking up with a part, like leaving a part of yourself behind that you wanted to leave behind. But I mean, everyone has, and it is a breakup song. It's absolutely a breakup song, but that's not the way we wrote it or intended it. But we knew that it would be perceived as a breakup song, so we kind of liked that it was this double meaning. But it's funny because people listen to it and they're like, "Wow, like you must have written this like the week or two after your breakup." And I'm like, "No, I wrote that like a year earlier, and it wasn't even." I sent it to my former partner, showing him the song when I wrote that song. It wasn't a breakup song about him. But it's funny
Yeah.
because it now is definitely like the breakup
Hmm.
anthem of my record and the song that people reference to
Oh wow.
most when they are saying like, oh, this is like the
Yeah.
song that's helping me through my breakup. And so that's funny because when we wrote it, we
Hmm.
didn't really write it as a breakup song, but it ended up on this breakup album being one of the more obvious breakup songs. So it is really funny the
Yeah.
way things can just happen that way. But also,
Mm.
I don't know, I have a friend or a couple of friends who are always like making fun of me saying that like my songs tell the future and I like write something and then it happens. And so this breakup song, I'm like,
Oh
this was
shit.
like one of my tell the future songs, maybe.
Well, is your subconscious slipping in,
Sure,
and
yeah.
that divine presence that probably just kind of you hadn't maybe necessarily acknowledged at the time,
Absolutely.
but you knew like
Yeah.
subconsciously, or the energies knew, or
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
that was it. And I think, like, with songwriting especially, but all art, it's like, and Rick Rubin talks about this a lot, is kind of like, we are vessels.
Yes.
And it's not like just things flow through us, and
Absolutely.
you can't really control a lot of it. And so it was there
Mhm.
floating around, and you kind
Caught
of
it.
captured it unintentionally, and it flowed right through you. And that's
Yeah.
why things happen coming through, because it's just like it's
Yeah.
there already, and now it's just kind of flowing through you that
Oh,
way.
I'm all about that. I love that. I've always felt like I don't I can't take credit for writing my songs. Like my ancestors are a
Mm-hmm.
part of it. Like this is all
Yep.
just things that they're flowing through me. I'm like catching them and sending them off. And so yeah,
Yep.
I so resonate with that.
Yeah. So I'm curious about the co-writing process. So
Mhm.
you mentioned earlier that you were writing a lot for
Yeah.
sync. First off, explain what that means,
Yeah.
writing for sync.
Yeah, so writing for sync, um, it's funny because I don't really know if I was doing it correctly or doing writing for sync correctly, but I think whenever I'm really writing for sync, I think we're writing to a brief. So we get a brief, and then it's like a specific TV show or specific scene. They're looking for something that sounds like this, something that sounds like that. They want my vocal because my vocal maybe is like Florence and the Machine or something like that, or and then we go based on the brief and then we create something. But what's fun is that I feel like with most of the writers I write with in the sync world, we're very loosey goosey. So we'll get a brief and then we end up taking it on a whole different direction and then send it to our reps and they're like, okay, cool, we'll put it in this other category. Um,
Right.
so I feel like for me as like a quote unquote like sync writer or sync artist, I don't know. I feel like I'm very lucky, and since I've signed with Secret Road, have had a lot of great luck with sync and have a lot of awesome syncs. But I don't know if when I'm in the room, if we're really after that first 10 minutes of having a conversation about the brief or a brief, if we even brought one into the room, if anything after that
Mm-hmm.
is really focused on sync. And really, we're just focused on what we want to say. The thing that is very
Mm.
sync, I will say, is we try to stay away from anything too specific. We try to stay away from profanities.
Right.
We try to make it, if it's a love song, be a love song that could be interpreted as not a love song or different things. So we try to make things that are really,
Sure.
I don't want to say generic or general, but like just open to interpretation, which is already how I like to
Yeah.
write. Like I like to write in a way,
Mm.
like you said, where this song could be interpreted in many different ways. I love that kind of writing, and I
Yeah.
think that lends itself very well
Yeah.
to sync. Um,
Yeah.
but generally, when I'm in a room for sync, we just kind of write whatever we want, and then we send it to the people and see if they like it. Yeah,
How quick are these turnarounds? Because if it's like a brief that comes in to Secret Road, and it's like, all right, it's for this TV show, or it's this ad, and they
hmm
want, like you said, a song that sounds like Florence and the Machine or
yeah,
whatever. Maybe it's for this scene, and we need it like this,
yeah.
and female vocal and whatever. Do they? Is it like typically a quick turnaround time? Does Secret Road hit you up and be like, hey, we
hmm
need this in 2 days?
Yeah.
Do you and Anna want to get together and write
hmm
something, and we'll, AG can produce, or whatever? Like,
Yeah.
set me through the process of just like how that actually
Yeah,
works.
there's a lot of quick turnarounds like that. And I will say that I'm not usually the person that is best for those quick turnaround things because one,
Okay.
I tour a lot, and two, um, I tour a lot, so I'm just not usually home. But but there
Sure.
are a lot of other like sync writers and producers who mostly stay in town in their studios. So anyway, yes, like the other day I got
Yeah.
like there was a vocal they wanted for a commercial and they were like, we need this in 12 hours. And I was like, oh great, I'm home, I'll do it. I
Mm,
have my SM7B. I can do vocals real quick. And so
represent.
it was a
Yep.
cover of, I think it was actually a Florence song. Or it was a cover of
Wow.
a cover
Okay.
Florence did, but it was the Florence version.
Okay.
So
Sure.
that, or I've done, there was a brief once where they wanted a cover of some other song, and we had like 3 days. It's usually very quick. I love a quick turnaround. I love a deadline. Deadlines are like my favorite thing. The other thing I
Cool.
was doing during the pandemic for 2 years was I was writing the music for a Netflix animated series called Spirit Rangers. And that was
Wow.
very quick turnarounds too, which was amazing because at that time in my life, I wasn't touring, as none of us really were.
Hmm.
So, I would get the script and then they would want an acoustic pass of the song within 48 to 72 hours. And then I would do that. And then once they
Wow.
approved the acoustic version, then I would have it produced out. And then that would be another like 72 hours and like boom, boom, boom. It went very fast.
Wait, okay. I want to touch on that
Yeah.
because first off, how'd you get that gig to write music for Spirit
Okay, so this
Rangers?
was crazy. So my next door neighbor in North Hollywood, like 8 years ago, 7 years ago, he is one of the writers on Spirit Rangers. So he got me in
Oh.
the room to do a composer test. And similarly to Peter Pan, it was very
Hmm.
like fish out of water feeling for me doing a composer test. I'd never ever done anything like that. I'd written one song for Wally Kazam, a kids show, with 2 other co-writers, like when I was like 19, and they ended up buying it, and that was like really fun. But I'd never done anything else in kids music since. But I used that experience with like just my own take on this thing because they wanted the story. Spirit Rangers is about an indigenous family that lives in a national park, and I really connected with the story. So it felt very easy to do this composer
Hmm.
test and to write a song based on this script. I felt like I was writing for me and my grandma. It
Hmm.
was just a very natural thing for me,
Hmm.
and I think that is what resonated with
Okay.
them, and they ended up giving me the job. And I was one of 2 composing teams for the first season, and then the second season they ended up giving me the whole show, which was super fun.
Wow.
Um, and yeah, it was so
What's a
fun.
composer test?
A composer test is literally like writing to a brief. They gave us 3 scripts and then had me choose one. And then when you're writing for a TV show, the script for a 30-minute or 20-minute kids show is like 17 pages. And then at some point in the episode, there's like a paragraph that has an explanation that the writers put in for what they want the song to sound like. And so you get that
Uh-huh.
script and then you basically create a demo as if you have the job. And so I created a 1-minute
Cool.
demo for this song called The Right Way, between a little girl and
Mm.
her elder. And I sent it to them, and I did both the vocals
Cool.
for the little girl and for the elder because I didn't want to
Nice,
hire a demo
nice.
vocalist, of course. And
Is this an animated show?
Animated
Are
show.
they actually singing
Animated
this in the
show.
episode and they
Yes.
sing to each other and stuff? It's
Yeah.
like,
So I
oh
was
wow,
writing
so
for
cool.
the
Oh, so
actors.
fun.
And so what was also fun about this
Yeah.
job was that I got to also I had to do everything from start to finish with the track. So I also coached the kids to sing. So I
Oh
ran the
wow.
session. Like
Yeah, you produced
produced it.
it.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
so it was really
Yeah.
fun getting to work with kids, and also adults. There were also adult
Cool.
guest stars and stuff. So
Hmm.
so actually, yeah, writing for television and writing for sync is similar but different because with sync you're writing to a brief, but with TV you're writing to a script with like a brief
Mm.
inside the script, but you get way more to work on with TV because you have an entire 17-page script.
Were you writing the lyrics too, or did the
Yep.
lyrics come from the
I
script?
did lyrics and music, everything, but I did pull a lot.
Oh.
Like I would every time I read a script, I was like circling things, being like, we got to bring that word in, that word in. It was like what was so fun writing for
Cool.
TV was like I felt like I got to be like an editor and like take every keyword from every line and incorporate that into the song because the writers want to hear their words
Cool.
in the song. But I have done work for kids TV where the lyrics are done. Like the writers have written the lyrics and they just want you to write melody, which is also fun too because it's like you get to like do a puzzle of like, how do I fit all these words in, because they want every single word in there.
Yeah. Right. That's when you call up Ben Gibbard. He's the master of fitting a gazillion words into
my gosh, music. Big fan.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, well, this show is called The New Music Business. Yeah. So we gotta talk about the business a little bit, and I'm curious. So, how does the business work for composing for a Netflix show, Spirit Rangers? Is this a work for hire? Are you credited? Do you own the songs? Is this a licensing deal? Do you get royalties, residuals?
Yeah.
Are you just getting a flat fee? Like, tell me how that situation works.
Yes. Yeah. It was a whole learning curve for me as well. When I got the job, I was like, how does this work on the business end? Because I was new to it. Luckily, I mean, first and foremost, luckily I have a really, really amazing lawyer. Everyone out there, like, have a lawyer, please. And so it was work for hire, so independent contractor. So I was never an employee of Netflix. I did not have a Netflix email address. But it was, I was paid per song and retained my writer share, but Netflix owns the publishing and owns the songs, so it is work for hire. But I still got to retain writer.
So when you say you retained your writer share, meaning just the performance royalty, so you're getting checks from your PRO essentially when the song airs, but you don't have any rights necessarily to the song.
Exactly. That's my interpretation of it. I do also have, luckily, very lucky to have a lawyer and business management who take care of a lot of that. So my understanding of it is that I retain my writer like ASCAP, and I have my cue sheets and everything on ASCAP. I can see every single episode that I've written for on Spirit Rangers comes up on my ASCAP, and comes up on IMDb and all of those things. But I don't own the song. The song I've been bought out from Netflix, which I'm super fine with because they treated me very well. But then also what was exciting that I'm so lucky to have gotten to do was they also hired me as a vocalist to sing the theme song as Raye Zaragoza, the artist, on the show.
Cool.
And there's 2 theme songs on the show, and I got to sing both of them. And so I get royalties as a vocalist through SAG for that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that is legit. And love being a vocalist.
Well, I'm not sure if we're if you're yeah. I don't know if we're legally allowed to talk about promoting the show. No, I'm just kidding. Now that SAG's on strike, we can't promote any show. No, I'm just kidding. I'm a SAG member as well, of course.
Well, we're promoting me as a writer on the show.
Right. I know. I'm totally giving you shit. Selena Gomez just got a bunch of shit for like posting a Only Murders in the Building promo, and they're like, you're breaking the SAG contract. You're not allowed to do that right now. You can't promote anything.
It's tricky.
It's like, what?
Yeah, I was just talking to someone about that, like how, like, I don't know, I was talking to the person who does like the morning show, the Today Show, and she was saying how she can't have anyone, like someone came to sing the song they wrote for Ted Lasso, but they can't show any clips from Ted Lasso, but they can perform the song they wrote for Ted Lasso. They just can't reference Ted Lasso.
Because it's promoting them.
Yeah.
Right. Oh my gosh. That's crazy. It's an interesting time right now.
I really hope they can work it all out. My brother is an actor. My dad's an actor. And they're both on the picket lines every day. And I really hope that we can reach an agreement soon and treat our writers and actors with respect.
Yeah. And totally. So getting back to the sync, so it's interesting, the difference between now that you've done both sync work and composing work, because when you were mentioning before how the deal works for composers, it almost seems like a hybrid of a sync deal, because some composers that I talk to, I mean, it's always work for hire, but like when they're not songs,
Mm-hmm.
when they're just like
Yeah.
scoring a show or something
Mm-hmm.
like that, it's a little bit
Yeah.
different because it's not like
Songs.
I don't those songs don't get registered in the cue sheets necessarily. I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it changes with like
Yeah.
ASCAP, you know, with their PRO. Um, but with this, because you were writing
Mm-hmm.
songs, you know, I guess the biggest difference is when you do a licensing. Well, I guess that's the big difference is in sync licensing. It's right in the title of what it's called. Is when you license a song for sync, you retain the ownership as the
Exactly.
writer, and you retain your publishing, or your sync agent, you
Mm-hmm.
know, participates in publishing along with you, but you retain ownership, so
Right.
you can do whatever you want with the
Exactly.
song. You can license it 1,000 other times if you want. That's, I guess, a big difference, is because when you are a composer on this
Mm-hmm.
Netflix show, like you can't license, you
No.
can't, just because you're a writer on it, you're not allowed to go license this song for other
Right.
people or anything like that,
Exactly.
right?
And these
Right.
songs, you know, they're written for the show specifically. They're not. I mean, they call me a composer. Like everything has been referenced to me as a composer, but I really what I'm doing is I'm a songwriter.
Hmm.
I'm not doing any underscore.
For hire.
Exactly. So yeah, songwriter for
Right.
hire.
Yeah.
And you know, the songs that I'm writing for the characters, for the specific scene in it. So the songs really have no reason to
Hmm.
live anywhere else other than on the show or on YouTube for the show. Um, so
Sure.
for those reasons, like work for hire stuff for kids stuff has always felt great. Because there's no really
Yeah.
other place those
Cool.
songs need to be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it makes
Yeah.
sense. So I want to talk about, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've been essentially self-releasing,
Hmm.
and is the new record, is that also self-released under
Yeah. Under
your
my
record
record
label,
label. Yeah.
Rebel River
Yeah.
Records? So talk to me about Rebel River Records and how that came to be and the idea behind that. I saw that you like involved your Patreon
Yeah.
backers in the process in some way. So yeah, talk to me about Rebel River
Yeah.
Records and just like the release process over the last,
Totally.
I guess, as long as you've been doing it.
Yeah. So Hold That Spirit is my third record, and I've only ever self released. And so I started Rebel River Records with my last record, Woman in Color. And at that time, my management was like shopping my record to different labels. And we had like a couple interesting things on the table. And with this record, we did too, but just none of it felt like it was worth giving up a lot of my agency or the rights to
Hmm.
have all the control. And also
Sure.
the fact that I do things that are outside of my artist project is really only possible because I don't have to get label waivers all the time. Even like for the Netflix
Hmm.
show, I would have had to get a label waiver if I was on a major label or was on a label, and that could have
Can you
held up.
explain what a label
Yeah, yeah. I was
waiver
actually
is?
talking about this with my Netflix rep, and so basically, like this is my understanding of it, so correct me if I am saying anything wrong, but when you're on a label, you know, they have full control over your catalog, over what you produce and what
Hmm.
you're doing. And so if you're going to do something work for hire where the label is not cut in or the label is not has no part of it, like if you're doing a TV show like this Netflix show where everything's work for hire, where let's say there is a part of your label deal where they control part of your publishing or they have say in your publishing or whatever, you would need to get a label waiver, basically the label allowing you to do that show or to do
Mm,
XYZ. And a lot of times
gotcha.
label waivers can take a lot of time to get approved, to get worked through, and a lot of TV doesn't have that time. And so my Netflix rep told me, she was like, "Oh yeah, like if we would have needed a label waiver to work with you, it could have changed everything because we worked very quickly once I was hired. Boom, we had to go
Wow.
to work." So and I had the
Sure.
ability to sign completely. No one has any, you know, I don't have to check with anyone. I don't have to check with a label if I can do this or do that. So it's worked really well for me to be independent. And
Yep.
so basically, Woman in Color, when
Cool.
I released that album in 2020, I just had this idea and I was like, you know, it would be fun. Like, what if I like started my own record label powered by my fans. And I've been on Patreon for 6 years. I love my Patreon.
Wow.
I've made like well into six figures on Patreon since I started. And I just
Hmm.
really, really, really am passionate about the subscription model for artists. And even on during the pandemic when things were really rough, I didn't know where I was going to be making money. I always had Patreon. Patreon was like um this like solid thing always. And so yeah, I just really leaned
Yeah.
into it and thought it'd be a fun way to kind of do kind of like a crowdfunding campaign, but have it be towards subscriptions instead of toward like a one-time payment of like Kickstarter or whatever for this last record. So I ended up being able to fund that last record just on kind of really pumping up my Patreon by creating this record label, which, you know, is an actual label. Like I self-release under Rebel River Records, but also I use my patrons as this kind of, they act as like my label reps, as like I like to say, because I literally post all of the songs for that I'm considering for my records on Patreon before they're out. So everyone
Oh
on
wow.
Patreon has heard the music like months in advance, and they vote on which songs they think should go on the record. So for Hold That Spirit and Woman in Color, I
Huh.
posted like 20 songs and then they voted on which ones they liked best, which I took into consideration with my own preferences, with my team's preferences, and with all that other things. But they really got a huge say. And like the last song on the record, on this record, When This Shit Is Over, I was not going to put on my album because it was like an older
Hmm.
song. I didn't really think it needed to be on the record, but my patrons like made
Sure.
sure it was on the record, so I put that on there for them. um and so
Wow.
it's really
Cool.
been fun to get to crowdsource, not only crowd fund but also crowdsource their opinions and treat them like my team.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about some Patreon tips. You said well into six figures, which is incredible. What do you attribute to your success on Patreon? Because I've talked to a lot of artists who gave it a
Yeah.
go and kind of either burnt out on
Yeah.
it, gave up on it. It didn't return what they thought,
Yeah.
based on the amount of effort they were putting into it. So, give us some tips to the artists that are listening,
Right.
just like how you have found success on Patreon.
Absolutely. And just to clarify, like I've made well into six figures in total since, so not yearly or anything, because that would be
Over
amazing.
six
Yeah.
years, I gotcha. Yeah, yeah,
But
right,
just so all your listeners don't think I'm like ding. But that's still a significant amount of money, and it has
right.
covered my rent for 6 years. But
Yeah,
so anyway,
huge.
I think I'm really lucky because I got in on Patreon when it was pretty new or newish. And I'm like
Mm-hmm.
on the back end of my
Mm-hmm.
Patreon, it says like I'm like a founder, like I'm one of the early folks that was there. And I think that
Wow.
was lucky because when I was promoting my Patreon in the beginning, it was very new. It was this like hot new
Mm,
thing. And a lot of the people who signed up were very much like, what is this? Like, this is an exciting new thing. And that was also back
sure.
when the Instagram, Facebook algorithms weren't shooting down anything that referenced Patreon or referenced other sites that have subscription models. I know Instagram's doing their own subscription model, or they were trying to. I don't know. So at that time, I was actually able to really to promote my Patreon subscriptions very well organically on Instagram and Facebook, which is a lot harder now, I will say.
Mm,
So I think I could see why someone getting started in the past 2 years might say, dang, like this is really hard. And I think a lot of that has to do with the algorithm. And it's just really hard to like have organic reach now to transition
sure.
people to Patreon. So a lot of people who I have on my Patreon have been there for like 4 years or more. Um, and I
Sure.
still am I acquire them at shows, or like I'm always mentioning my Patreon. I try to always drop it
Okay.
on stage or just in conversations on interviews, because you just never know, someone out there like wants to support you. And so I mean, my tips would be to like, there have been times where I have devoted a lot more time and energy to promoting my Patreon and to giving it like a much larger
Mm-hmm.
part of my mental space. And there are times when I've given it a little bit less. And then it's kind of like the
Mm-hmm.
numbers have shown that. And so if you start a Patreon, you can really just post once a week, have it be something that's not something that you feel like is going to take over your life, and tell the
Mm,
people on Patreon that's what you're doing. This is what you can expect from me, and then have it there, because a lot of people will sign up for your Patreon just because they want to support you and they don't really care how often you post. So
mm-hmm.
just having it there is nice, even if it's an extra like $100, $200 a month, and then it can grow if you just organically person to person at your shows, if you tour a lot or here or there, or mention it on your Instagram, or I've always like gamified it, being like, if I get 20 new patrons today or next week or whatever on Instagram, then I will release a video of this, or like have these benchmarks. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it has worked for me, and it's a slow climb, but for me, even with like all of my development of like my fan base, I feel like has been one by one,
Sure.
like one person to this person told that
Mm,
person to that person. And the same thing goes for Patreon. I feel like once you get that one person who's like,
yeah.
I believe in you and I'm going to give you $25 every month for the next 6 years, like, and then if you get 100 of those,
Yeah.
it's just, I only have like 100 and something
Yeah.
patrons, but it makes a huge difference in my income.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's one by one.
I mean, yeah, and that's it's the concept of the 1,000 true fans, which
Yeah.
it's a misnomer that it needs to be 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
It's any number of true fans
Yeah.
that are going to support you every year at varying amounts,
Mm-hmm.
and this is a true testament to, we become so obsessed as an industry with the macro
Mm-hmm.
numbers. They're listed right there on Spotify. What are your
Mm-hmm.
monthly listeners? What are your stream counts and all of that stuff? We just posted an episode with the guys from Beat App. Their entire job is fighting streaming fraud
Mm-hmm.
because it is so rampant, and it's just like all these numbers are inflated
Yeah.
and manipulated, and it's like, and even Russ, the rap artist Russ, was just going off on Twitter because his album came out and it didn't chart on Billboard
Mm-hmm.
like he thought it was supposed to, and he's just like, all these other major label artists, because he's totally independent,
Mm-hmm.
self-released DIY as well. It's like all these major label artists, they're manipulating the charts, being X, Y, and Z, and this is how it's done, and these numbers are inflated, and these bots and da da da. Which he's not
Mm-hmm.
wrong; he's completely accurate. And we just like the conversation is so obsessive around these top level vanity
Yeah.
metrics, and that's all really what they are. They're just vanity metrics, and they're not
Yeah.
meaningful, and especially when like streaming pays what it pays or doesn't pay. It's like, at the end of the day, what are we doing? Like, what is the point of what we're
Right.
doing? And it's like, it's for most of us, I would imagine, it's to make a living supporting the kind of lifestyle that we want to live, doing what we
Yeah.
love, but also, really engaging and finding those people that are going to resonate with the art that we put
Yeah.
out. And so you have, I'm on your Patreon right now. You have 149
Mm-hmm.
patrons, and that's fantastic. And I see it varying levels, and I love that you have kind of listed this right here. It's like, I love the terms like interns, $5 a month, engineers, $15 a month, producers, $35 a month, executives, $150 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, you're a true testament to just kind of, not obsessing over the macro numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Is like, how do I get more streams? Why aren't I at the gazillions listeners? Blah, blah, blah. But really focusing in on the people that actually
Mm-hmm.
care, and then doubling down on that and realizing, well, if I connect with these people on a real deep, intimate level and meaningful level, and it's like a respectful
Mm-hmm.
relationship, then they're going to stay with me most likely for
Yeah.
life. Like you said, a lot of them already been with you for years.
Yep.
There's no indication that they're just going to dip out because you've continued that relationship.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have some fans that have grown up with me. There's a couple um fans of mine that are like maybe 12 now, but they started listening to my music when they were 6 and like 5, and I've watched
Wow.
them grow up.
Half their life.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
amazing. And I am so about like exactly what you said, like about the micro. I'm all about the super fan, and I make the music for the super fans, and I make sure that my super fans always feel like they're being heard and they are being taken care of, and that at my shows I try to make sure I know who in the audience is a patron. Like, hey Jalmer, thank you for being here.
Mm,
My patron's here. You, like Susie, thank you for being here. Like, I'm so good to see you. Like, again, like I want to make sure
yeah.
that people in
Awesome.
the inner circle feel seen and heard, and that people know that at any time they can join our inner circle. And I recognize faces at shows. I
Mm,
try to remember names, and like my streaming numbers are like
Awesome.
nothing to write home about, nothing I really give a shit about. And like, of course, like I'm on like
Right.
one like folk editorial playlist on Spotify that isn't even the majority of my streams on that song. And I like have never really cared too much about streaming because I know that like the things that have sustained me and have given me such a amazing life with music are really more about the like micro like fan to artist relationship. I do really good on merch.
Yes.
I do really good with live shows, and I do great with my Patreon. But a lot of the more macro things like charting on streaming or charting on this or that, like it's just it hasn't been how my music career has gone, and I'm like fine with that. I don't know if I'll ever be a major label artist or I'll ever be a million listener a month artist on Spotify, maybe, who knows. But like that's not really what I care about. And I make like a
Yeah.
really amazing living. I have like, investment accounts and a savings account and all like these things that
Hmm.
I've completely made through music because I have really valued, you know, instead of the vanity, I've really valued the sustainability. And that is also financial.
Mm.
And I have so much rather invest my time into, playing smaller shows where I know I can fill the room instead of like the vanity of like, I'm going to do this big thing and like see if it works or whatever. And that's also why I've played
Right.
solo for most of my career, like the past 10 years.
Mm.
I'm doing my first headline tour with a band this month. But before this, I've started playing shows when I was 19. I'm 30. I've only ever played solo and kept my overhead very, very low. I don't believe in touring
Hmm.
and losing money. I just don't want to do it. I also don't really have any interest in going to debt. So I just don't do anything that's going to overextend myself, and I keep overhead very, very low.
Yeah.
William Elliott Whitmore and Chloe Whitmore, his wife, I toured with them, and they both taught me. They were like, keep overhead low, do it, like, and really nurture the small super fan audience, and they do so well with that. And that's always just been my way because
Mm.
I can't compete with like the major this and the, like I can't compete with that, and I don't really care to. So, yeah.
Fantastic, Ray. Well, this is it's been so great, and I appreciate you sharing so much and being so transparent. And we've really gone on a journey this afternoon, all over the place, and it's great. It is fantastic. And again, the record's brilliant, and I love it. And I wish you all the best on the tour. I'm gonna come to the Hotel Cafe show that I saw you're doing in a couple weeks, so I'll be there. That's exciting. So I have one final question that I ask everyone who comes on the show, and that is, what does it mean to you to make it in the new music business?
What does it mean to me to make it in the new music business? Honestly, this is like a boring answer, but I think it means to be able to support the life that you want. It does not need to be anything crazy. Like, I live in a one bedroom apartment in Long Beach, and I can sustain my life very comfortably. I'm never really stressed about money on a day to day basis. So, that for me is making it. My music has fed this life.
Mm.
It's nothing extravagant, but it is absolutely wonderful and sustainable. So, that to me is making it. And being open and in the creative ways that can come about. I think when I first started playing music, I thought that my album sales needed to be what created my life, but I've realized that it's actually some of the side dishes that actually make it happen, like the sync stuff, the TV stuff, the theater stuff, the this or that, like the
Mm-hmm.
Patreon. It's not just
Patreon.
about the
Yeah.
like head on like selling albums. And so yeah, being
Yep.
willing to open yourself up to those things.
Raye Zaragoza,
Thank
thank
you,
you so much. That
Ari.
was great. Today's episode was edited by Mikey Evans with music by Grassroots District and produced by all the great people at Ari's Take.